addition to his U.S. territory. And he's there all the time. Maybe I'll get to see Canada next year. British Columbia is nice.
It's beautiful.
I'm Julie Zenner along with Jack Sutherland. Here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
A generous grant from the Bush Foundation will help revitalize Western Duluth's St. Louis River corridor. We'll talk about that collaboration with some of the planning partners.
Growing older is part of life, but preparing for the needs of aging parents is often overlooked. Tonight we'll share some helpful tips and resources to help smooth that transition into the golden years.
And we'll have the week's business headlines and a news file story from 25 years ago.
It's all coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. This week's show is recorded on Wednesday afternoon due to the Labor Day weekend. And my old friend Jack Sutherland is here filling in for Denny. Jack, it's great to see you.
Thanks, Julie, and I'm glad you reminded me that it's the old friend. It's good to hear.
The old friend, and it feels like old times. It feels right to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here.
And I think you remember what to do, so let's get started.
Well, we'll see. Thanks, Julie. Now, plans to revitalize Western Duluth's St. Louis River corridor received a big boost this week with the announcement of a large grant from the Bush Foundation. The nearly $200,000 Bush Community Innovation Grant will be used in a collaborative project of the St. Louis River Alliance, Duluth Local Initiative Support Corporation, and the University of Minnesota. So here to tell us more is Bill Majewski, Chair of the St. Louis River Alliance Board, and Pam Kramer is Executive Director of Duluth LISC, and thanks to you both for being here. So, Bill, what is the big thrust of the money going to be going for in the development here?
Well, this is a project that will really focus a lot on work with the University of Minnesota graduate students in the River Corridor initiative that the mayor has launched. And so we'll be looking at a lot of different elements of the neighborhoods from Fond du Lac to Lincoln Park. And we'll be spending about 30 months doing this. And we hope to focus in on some projects that will help jumpstart some of the improvements that will happen eventually in the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, will the work be primarily focused on all aspects of healthy neighborhoods, or is it going to be more directed toward, the environment and recreation, things like that?
Bill, start with that and I'll add on.
All right.
Well, they're going to be looking hopefully holistically at the neighborhoods. They're talking about wanting to look at adequate access to the neighborhoods, health care, housing, food, and as well as access to parks and public facilities. So it'll be fairly comprehensive.
And this kind of comprehensive neighborhood revitalization is something that Lisk is pretty familiar with from working in other neighborhoods around the community.
That's right. This will really build on some of the work that we've been doing in some of the St. Louis River corridor communities. So Lisk has been working for about 7 years on neighborhood-driven plans in Lincoln Park, West Duluth, Morgan Park. What this will enable us to do is have some new partners, some new tools, but also, have the expertise of the University of Minnesota School of Architecture and their landscape program, and also their some of their planning staff.
As far as the future plans for the western neighborhoods, is there generally a consensus of agreement among the neighborhoods, or are there some issues and perspectives that need to be worked out? What's your view on that?
Well, for me, it's been exciting to see that there's a coalition that's already formed, the River Corridor Coalition. So there's been a number of community club leaders working together, really talking about there's so many assets of this neighborhood. That there's the beautiful river that's kind of undiscovered, the recreational assets, the new schools that are available. So I think there's agreement on that it's kind of an undiscovered gem, and there's an opportunity to market the neighborhood and have people familiar with the neighborhood. I think what's new is that we have a riverfront that's being cleaned up, and how do you make sure that you can access that riverfront, but also you're careful about any environmental considerations that have to be dealt with.
I would say that we have been working between the neighborhoods. There's been some work being done, but this initiative will bring more of the neighborhoods together rather than separately talking to them.
Right.
So I'm hoping that people will begin to realize that there are a lot of common elements that everybody appreciates, or issues that we're dealing with, and that we can come up with some solutions that will be viable.
Are there some real challenges that you see in those neighborhoods as you look at them individually or collectively that have to be overcome for this area to really thrive?
As in many of our neighborhoods, we have an aging housing stock. So we have to continue to be working on improving that housing stock. We also have a housing shortage, so there actually in the western part of town there's opportunities because there's land that could be developed, there's opportunities for infill and new development. I think the other opportunity certainly is the funding that's been made available through the half and half tax, to really look at the tourist opportunities too. So some of it is really integrating a lot of pieces together will be the challenge, but that's part of what we'll be working on helping with.
What do you think it was that convinced the Bush Foundation to issue this grant in the first place? Because I know money's tight all over. So what do you think it was that convinced them to make this grant?
I think it was a lot of citizen participation that will be involved in this. The St. Louis River Alliance has a certain constituency that we've been working with for almost 20 years. Lisk has likewise has been working for a good number of years, and they have a lot of constituents that are active in projects that they're supporting. And so I think between the two of us, we can bring a lot of people to the table that have a direct interest in the vitality of the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. And how will the residents and the businesses actually be engaged in the process? Has that been worked out yet, or do you have a vision for how that might work?
It's part of the reason St. Louis River Alliance and Duluth Lisk are involved, to make sure that we're really bringing folks to the table. The beginning of the grant will be more research done by the university and by our partnership team, looking at what's already been studied, looking at demographics, looking at kind of the background information, and doing some interviews. And the workshops, there'll be a series of pretty intense community workshops. Those will start in the spring. So the fall will be more planning and background work. But part of what we're committed to is making sure that we can help people who may have childcare needs in order to come to meetings, help them with transportation access, trying to make these sessions available for people with limited incomes or, scheduling issues. So that's part of our commitment.
And another thing that I think is going to be critical here is that they're going to have facilitators to help the discussions along that really know how to draw things out of people. And they're talking about at least 60 students, graduate students, being involved over the course of the 30 months and developing a community guidebook that will outline to the entire city how these projects, identifying the projects and how they might be funded and implemented. And so that will be a big help in terms of carrying these things forward, where sometimes they become dusty and are put on the shelf and they don't go anywhere. The university has a commitment to continue to be involved in this beyond the grant period, so that they'll be here several years from now evaluating what they prepared under this grant and updating it.
Is there a concern about the fact that the river has made such terrific improvements over the years, and is there a concern about, well, we really have to be careful about development to not go backwards?
Well, one of the things that attracted us to this, the St. Louis River Alliance, is that we've been pretty much focused on the water portion of it. But now we realize that now that we've got it improved, we want to be careful about that edge where the water and the highland part meet, and whether or not whatever is being proposed on the upland side may have an impact, and we want to be careful about watching that.
Of course, some of those neighborhoods were among those that were hurt the worst in the flood a couple of years ago. Any concerns about making major investments along that flood plain? And are there things that are taking place in discussions to make sure that those investments aren't vulnerable?
That's part of this process as well, making sure, the goal is to have a creative process, have it be community driven, but also really look at the long-term resiliency of the neighborhoods, making sure that we're dealing with any of the potential impacts of environmental change and impacts of more people living in the neighborhood, but also having the opportunity to build on the assets and showing the community what a wonderful neighborhood this is.
And we only have a minute left. What can citizens do if they want to get involved and help out with this project?
Well, we are really hoping to have a very open public input process. Like I said, we've got people that we deal with, but I think there's going to be a lot of public advertising and encouraging people to come, and we're going to try and in the announcement of these events, try and make it appealing to people to come in and participate in them.
Great. Sounds like a great, exciting project. Bill and Pam, thanks so much for coming and sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You bet.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
The Edmund Fitzgerald, like this ship, was hauling iron ore to the steel mills of Detroit. A violent storm literally ripped the ship in two, sending 29 men to death in the icy water of Lake Superior. Now another ship, the Grayling, is searching to find the mystery of the sinking of the Fitzgerald. The expedition is led by the Michigan Sea Grant College program. The key piece of equipment is a mini rover with a three-dimensional camera and sonar.
Any way you want the picture shot, this little robot can do it. It's amazing. The vessel hasn't changed a bit in 14 years. It's in a big deep freeze. It's going to be there a long time without any deterioration.
Some scientists estimate that the ship, loaded with 26,000 tons of ore, reached a speed of 200 miles per hour when it hit bottom. Since the Fitzgerald sank 17 miles northwest of here, there's been endless fascination about what happened to the Detroit-bound ship that wintry night. This expedition may help unravel the mystery of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
When we take our acoustic information and our 3D information back to the university for interpolation in the 3D computer department, that they will be able to possibly put together a picture on a computer animation of what actually happened after looking at the site.
But the Edmund Fitzgerald may never reveal its deep mysteries. In Whitefish Bay, Bill Gallagher for CBS News.
As much as we try to fight it, there's no stopping the march of time. We are all getting older and eventually may face the fact that we aren't able to do the things that we once did. But how many plan for the day that we need some help at home? And have you talked with your loved ones about expectations in the case of a health crisis? To encourage that important conversation, we've invited some experts on aging resources to the studio. Mary Andrews is owner of the Home Instead Senior Care Offices in northern Minnesota. Nicole Meller is an information and assistance specialist with the Douglas County Aging Resource Center. And Jill Corbin is a community service representative with Home Instead Senior Care. And thanks to all of you for coming in today. This is a topic I think that touches every one of us in some way on both ends of that spectrum. But Mary, why is it so important for families to start talking about those issues of aging?
Well, there's 80 million Americans that have a problem with very sensitive topics such as aging with their kids. It's a kind of a taboo subject that most families don't want to face. And so that creates problems with communication amongst the children. And so it's something that we see quite regularly out there.
What makes it so hard to talk about it? You know, it is something that affects every one of us, but why that avoidance?
It's inevitable that we all are going to reach that point, and everybody has had a grandmother or grandfather or has an aging parent, and so I think it's that child parent role. You know, people live in the role that they grew up with, and so when you have to actually cross that boundary and take on the role of a decision maker for their parent, that's where it gets a little sticky.
And it's sticky because the conversation is happening before the roles have reversed. So that's the hope. We're having this conversation before the roles are reversed. And so that's what throws in the stickiness, more of the stickiness and the sensitivity to the issue as well.
So Nicole, if someone comes into your office and they say, gee, you know, I'm an adult child and I've got to deal with my aging parent, and I just need to know what are the most important areas I need to focus on, what do you tell someone like that?
Well, in the Aging and Disability Resource Center, we kind of try to gather information on the front end about, you know, trying to hone in on exactly what needs they're looking at. You know, what are they struggling with? What have you noticed? And encouraging them to have conversations if they haven't. I think a lot of times when we get calls, those conversations haven't happened. And so we're kind of asking the adult child, you know, do you know what their financial situation is like? You know, are they receiving any help from you, from neighbors? You know, where are they living now? There's a lot of things that we explore when someone comes into the office, and we try to just we try not to overwhelm, because it can be very overwhelming to all the information that we're giving out too. So trying to just kind of meet them where they're at.
Jill, that issue of living choices, you know, when is the right time for families to maybe consider moving parents out of their home? Are there certain signs or recommendations that you would give them?
Hopefully, I would say, Julie, the conversation is happening before. And so at Home Instead, we have a tool that's called the 40-70 rule. Very simply put, when someone is in their 40s, hopefully that's the time when you're having the conversation with your, let's say, parent who is in their 70s. Hopefully we're having this conversation ahead of time, and then we can prevent that so we're not left wondering what would they have wanted. But what you're looking at, would be signs and symptoms when you're having conversations with mom and you don't live in town. Then when you go and come to visit, you see a much different picture. That's a big giveaway. When you're seeing that there's cover-up being done, we see a lot of when one spouse passes away, and then you don't realize how much dementia, how dad has been affected by that. We see a lot of scenarios like that. So it's really looking for those little cues when you're in your parents' home. How are things running? Are things slipping in the household?
And are there things that you can do physically to the home to make it safer and a better place for them to be? Or if somebody's going to be living on their own, tips to just make it healthier for them. And
absolutely, and Nicole can probably speak to some of the things that she sets up with her families, but there are equipment companies out there that will sell, well, you can even go into a Home Depot and buy grab bars for the shower area, and that will make a big difference whether a person can operate safely in the bathroom. That's where they find the most falls. And the other would be the end of life issues that we face too. And again, with the tools that we're dealing with, creating that conversation in order to plan for the future is something that what we're hoping to do with this is make it a workable plan. And addressing those might be just a piece of it.
We work with Senior Connections too, and we do try to do some preventative things, education and outreach. And one of the programs that we coordinate with, they're evidence-based classes that individuals can take called Matter of Balance and Living Well with Chronic Conditions. And in Matter of Balance, it is touched on a little bit about things that you can do to make your home more safe and avoid falls, like moving throw rugs and cords and things like that. So there's checklists that we will go through if an individual is interested in participating in one of those classes too.
Are there some tips or advice you can give to folks? And I'm sure there are hundreds of them that are in this position. They know they want to talk to their parents. Their parents are resistant. And yet, whether it's driving or moving out of the house or, gee, you're not eating correctly, how can a relative or a friend or a child introduce that in a respectful way where the parent might then engage? Are there some tips to give folks, or is it just, wing it and see what happens?
That's why Home Instead came up with this tool, and it's on the website 4070talk.com, and it's an action plan to start having these conversations that hopefully take some of the sensitivity out of it. So it follows a process. It covers 6 topics, and it follows the format of ACT. You assess, you consider, and then you talk about it. So it's a workbook that you can go through together as a family. So it talks about living choices, financial choices, health, driving, dating and relationships, and end of life. And there's a checklist that goes through each of these topics and then follows the assess, consider, talk format. So hopefully that's taking the stress away from the situation.
It guides you through it. It's actually a fill-in-the-blanks type of book too. So it also gives you at the very end of it a checkoff list. Who do you need to talk to for your financial planning, and their name and phone number. So it will actually guide you through every step.
do you find it's important for people to have these plans kind of written down or formalized ahead of time?
Absolutely, because it gives you more say in how your end of life will be and what choices you want. And we always encourage, again, with doing like power of attorney for finances and healthcare, because you want to avoid, if a medical emergency happens, you want to have somebody ready to make decisions for you, so it doesn't end up having to do like a guardianship or something. So you want to plan ahead. And I think one of the tips too, because it's a very sensitive topic too, and if you want to keep it more lighthearted, I guess, one of the things that I know Senior Connections will do too is they'll offer with the meals. You could say, with the holidays coming up, I got you a gift certificate. You could maybe try Meals on Wheels. That might be really helpful, kind of a tip too. But folks will call in and say, well, how do I get started? And we'll give them some information. And sometimes the adult child is like, oh, I'm going to take that back to my mom or dad or whoever. Or sometimes they're like, you know, do you think you could come out to the house and facilitate the conversation with us? And we will do that as well.
You've talked about a power of attorney, and it sounds like you all think that's a very, very, very important document for folks to have.
Living wills too.
Yeah, okay, that was my question. Are there any other documents that you think folks really need to have lined up for their future?
I think so.
Absolutely. Living wills, power of attorneys for both financial as well as medical are just the two that we really focus in on and make sure that we have that conversation each and every time with our families. Any others that you can think of?
The do not resuscitate versus
Oh,
full
yes.
resuscitation, absolutely very difficult to talk about. So that's why it's nice to be good, not only nice, it's good and essential to be having those conversations ahead of time and be working through that topic and getting that in place with your doctor so that your wishes are carried out. Because again, we hate to hear those conversations, oh, I wish I would have known what she wanted.
So it sounds like just planning ahead, keeping communication open, being sensitive to issues, all good as you look toward the future. And you have some good tools. We'll have the website up so that people can take a look at it. But thank you for coming in and talking about it. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks. It's time for the week's business headlines from Business North. The U.S. International Trade Commission has voted to impose penalties on companies in Korea and 5 other countries that are dumping steel products into the United States. U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar made the announcement this week after urging the agency to impose penalties on Korean firms to offset any gains they have achieved through illegal practices. The ITC's ruling will impose anti-dumping duties on steel manufactured by some firms in South Korea, India, Taiwan, Turkey, Ukraine, and Vietnam. Klobuchar called the decision a significant victory for hardworking miners in Minnesota.
The Pickwick restaurant in Duluth celebrated its 100th year of operation last Friday with an outdoor party. The iconic Duluth eatery opened in 1888 as the Old Saloon and was originally located within Fitger's Brewery Company. It has operated at its current location adjacent to Fitger's in Duluth's old downtown business district since 1914. It survived the Great Depression and has changed ownership only a few times.
First National Bank of Park Falls was honored this month by the Park Falls Area Community Development Corporation as 2014 Business of the Year. The bank is considered an anchor of not only the downtown area, but also of the community at large. The bank has been in the same location in Park Falls for the past 100 years. For 20 consecutive years, First National has been rated a 5-star bank, which puts it in the top 10% of all banks in the United States. For more business and economic news, visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment about our show, call now. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send your comments in an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And you can visit the WDSE website for news about the station, watch clips from your favorite programs, or even sign up to become a member if you'd like. And Jack, thanks for filling in for Denny. It's great to see you again. It's been 20 years since the two of us started doing this, and we're both getting dangerously close to our kids having those conversations we were just talking about.
Well, I know that that our kids are going to be calling you, Julie, to come in when the conversation is ready. So help them out. I'm sure you will.
All right, I will do that. For Jack and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great Labor Day weekend.